Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into Richard Rohr's really powerful book, The Tears of Things. It's a deep look into the prophetic tradition and, more importantly, what it has to say to our current age of anger and, constant division.
Right out of the gate, the book hits you with this powerful challenge. What if our first reactions, our gut certainties, are just wrong? And what if we desperately need voices to point that out, to shake us out of our comfortable bubbles? That, right there, is the heart of Rohr's whole exploration of what a prophet really is. Someone who speaks the uncomfortable but absolutely necessary truth.
Okay, so to really unpack what Rohr is getting at, we've broken this down into 4 parts. First, we're going to look at why he felt he had to write this book right now. Then, we'll give you a map of how the book is laid out, pull out 3 key takeaways you won't want to miss, and then at the end, we'll take a step back and give you a balanced look at the book's message. So let's start at the beginning. Who exactly is Richard Rohr, and what's the problem he was trying to solve with this book? What makes this ancient message from these prophets feel so urgent to him today? First off, the author. So Richard Rohr is a Franciscan friar, and he's the founder of the Center for Action and Contemplation. He's known all over the world for his incredible ability to take these really deep, sometimes mystical spiritual ideas and make them feel completely relevant to our modern lives. So he's not just some academic in an ivory tower. For a lot of people, he's a real spiritual guide. Now, this really gets to the heart of Rohr's motivation. He basically argues that modern religion has lost its licensed critic, the prophet. And, without that critical voice inside the house, he says religion just gets way too comfortable. It starts cozying up to political power instead of challenging it. It gets obsessed with personal rules and individual sins, while totally ignoring these massive collective evils like systemic injustice or war. And his solution, or at least part of it, is this idea he calls holy disorder. Now, this isn't just chaos for chaos's sake. It's the idea that real growth, whether it's for a person or a whole society, it just doesn't happen without disrupting the way things are. So the prophet's job is to kickstart that holy disorder, to break open the status quo so that something more just and more loving has a chance to grow. So that's the why behind the book. Now let's get into the how. How does Rohr actually build his argument? How does he lay this all out for us? Well, the book is really structured like a journey. It starts with an intro called Good Trouble, right away setting the stage for that holy disorder we just talked about. Chapter 1 introduces his main theme, the tears of things. Then the whole middle section is a deep dive into the lives of specific biblical prophets, guys like Amos and Jeremiah, to see these ideas in action. And then he brings it all home, showing how this entire prophetic journey ultimately leads to this profound transformative message about love. Okay, and that structure leads to some incredibly powerful insights. We've really spent some time with this, and we've distilled Rohr's message down into what we think are 3 crucial takeaways. These are the ideas that really stick with you long after you've finished reading. So, the first huge idea is about the emotional and spiritual journey of the prophet, and Rohr holds this up as a model for all of us. The point is, it's not about being born perfect or enlightened. It's a process. And it's a process that starts in a place we all know very well, anger. Rohr calls this 3-step process the way of tears. And it starts with righteous anger at injustice. That anger is good. It's necessary. But, and this is the key, if you just stay angry, it sours into bitterness and just creates more division. So the crucial move is that the anger has to soften into what he calls the tears of things, a deep, genuine grief for the brokenness of the world. And it's that grief that opens you up to real empathy, to a sympathy that connects you to everyone. Because really, it's hard to attack someone you're weeping with. All right, the second major takeaway, this one challenges a huge cornerstone of modern Western religion. It really forces a radical shift in how we think about sin, moving our focus from just our personal, private screw-ups to the unjust systems we're all a part of, often without even knowing it. And this chart just lays out the difference perfectly. Rohr argues that for centuries, religion has been obsessed with individual sin, finding the bad apples and focusing on personal purity rules. That approach always asks who's to blame. But the prophets? They were obsessed with collective sin. They criticized the whole system, the cultural lies, the unfair economies, the self-serving politics. Their question wasn't who's the bad guy, it was what systems are creating all this suffering. That is a total game changer of a perspective. Rohr's final key idea is, well, it's completely the opposite of how our culture thinks about success, influence, and making a difference. He argues that real divine change doesn't come from the top. It doesn't come from the powerful or the majority. It actually comes from the margins. And he calls this group the remnant. It's not the famous leaders or the big, shiny institutions. Nope. It's the small, often forgotten group of outsiders, the humble, the lowly, who carry the truth forward. And according to Rohr's reading of the Bible, this isn't just a fluke, it's a consistent pattern. God consistently chooses to work through the small, the rejected, and the powerless. And this idea is absolutely rooted in Scripture. I mean, this quote from the prophet Zephaniah says it all. The message is that hope isn't found with the powerful people, it's with this humble few who trust in something bigger than power and success. This idea just completely flips our understanding of influence on its head. It suggests true change doesn't start in the center, it starts on the edges. So there you have it, 3 really powerful takeaways. The journey from anger to empathy, the focus on collective sin, and the power of the remnant. They're challenging, for sure, but to get a full picture, let's step back and look at both the book's incredible strengths and some of its potential limitations. Okay, so on the strength side, the book's greatest asset is its prophetic urgency. It just feels like this passionate, compelling wake-up call for why we need this critical voice today more than ever. Another huge strength is its psychological depth. That Way of Tears is such a brilliant framework that connects these ancient ideas to the very real human emotions of anger and grief. And finally, his critique of systems is just masterful. Shifting the focus from bad guys to broken systems is such a powerful and needed move. Now, on the flip side, some readers might find ideas like holy disorder to be a little, well, idealistic. It sounds great in theory, but the book is maybe a bit light on the practical, step-by-step guide for how to actually do it. Second, Rohr does sometimes make these sweeping statements about history that, while they make a strong point, they might lack a bit of academic nuance. And finally, and to his immense credit, Rohr points this out himself. He acknowledges that his perspective is limited because he's a white, male clergy person, and he hopes others will explore this path from their own unique points of view. So, in the end, here's what you should take away. The Tears of Things is not just a history lesson about ancient prophets. It's really a mirror that Rohr is holding up to our own time. He argues a prophet's real job is to expose the convenient lies a culture tells itself. And that leaves all of us with a really provocative and, I think, essential question. If he's right about that, what are the truths that our culture is so desperately trying to hide from right now?